My name is Sophia, and for years, I was told my dreams were too big for someone like me. I wanted to start my own business, but everyone around me, including my father, kept telling me it wasn't realistic. You're not cut out for this, he'd say. This is too hard. You're just wasting your time. I heard those words so many times, they started to sink in. But despite everything, I kept pushing forward, determined to prove them all wrong. And then, last night, everything changed. Last night, my father saw my name on Forbes, and he couldn't believe his eyes. For as long as I can remember, I've always had big dreams. But growing up, I didn't always have the support I needed. My father, the person I looked up to the most, always seemed to think I wasn't good enough. He believed that starting a business was a pipe dream, something only for the lucky or the rich. I remember the first time I told him about my business idea. I was so excited, my heart racing with hope, but he just looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. Are you sure you want to do this, Sophia? You don't have the experience. You're not built for this kind of thing. His words hit me like a slap in the face. At first, I thought he was just being protective, but as time went on, I realized he didn't believe in me at all. Every time I failed, every time things didn't go as planned, he would say, "I told you so." Those words crushed me, especially coming from my father. But even though it hurt, I didn't give up. I kept working hard, day and night, trying to build something that would prove him wrong. The failures were tough, and there were times I wondered if he was right. I even considered walking away from my dreams. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered how badly I wanted to show my father and everyone else that I could succeed. As the years went by, I started to get a little traction. Slowly, my business began to grow, but it still wasn't enough to change my father's mind. He just couldn't see it. "You're still not there yet," he would say, and it would sting every time. But something inside me changed. I knew that success wasn't about his approval. It was about proving to myself that I could do it. I kept pushing forward, working harder, and believing in myself even when he didn't. Little by little, my business grew stronger, and I could feel that success was closer than ever. Then one day, out of the blue, I got an email that changed everything. It was from Forbes. They wanted to feature my business. I couldn't believe it. I'd made it. I'd finally done something that my father could never have imagined. I wanted to shout from the rooftops, but instead, I just sat there, staring at the email, in shock. That night, I showed my father the article. His face went pale as he read the headline. Sophia's business featured on Forbes. He couldn't believe his eyes. The same daughter he doubted for so long had succeeded, and now the world knew it. When I first started my business, I had nothing but passion and a dream. I remember waking up every day excited, ready to dive into the work that I believed would one day make me successful. I was eager to make a difference, to build something of my own. But there was one big problem. I had no money. I didn't come from a wealthy family, and every penny I spent on my business came from savings that were barely enough to cover my bills. I couldn't afford the fancy offices or equipment that other businesses had. All I had was my small laptop, a little space in my bedroom, and the determination to make it work. But the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the lack of support, especially from my father. He had always been a practical man, someone who believed in working a regular job and following the safe path. When I told him about my dream, I thought he would be proud of me for trying something new, but instead, his reaction was the complete opposite. He laughed. "You're just wasting your time, Sophia," he said, looking at me like I was a fool. "You don't have what it takes. This business, it's a failure waiting to happen." I couldn't understand why he didn't believe in me. It hurt so much because he was my father, the one person whose opinion meant the most to me. But instead of supporting me, He saw me as foolish, even reckless. Every time I tried to explain my ideas, he would interrupt with more doubts. He would remind me of all the reasons why it was a bad idea, why it would never work. "You're not good enough for this," he would say. "This is too hard. You're not cut out for this world." Every word stung, and every failure seemed to prove him right. But even then, I couldn't stop. I couldn't let go of the dream I had worked so hard for. I knew deep down that my business could work if I just kept going. But it wasn't easy. There were nights I stayed awake, wondering if he was right. There were moments when I felt like giving up, when everything seemed so hopeless. But I couldn't. I refused to. Every day felt like a battle, not just to survive, but to prove to my father, to the world, and to myself that I was more than just the girl who dreamed too big. I wanted to show them all that I was a woman with dreams, someone who deserved a chance to make them come true. But that chance never seemed to come. Instead, I had to fight for it every single day, pouring every ounce of my energy into making my business grow, even when it felt like no one was watching and no one believed in me. And so, I kept working. Even when my father told me my ideas were stupid, even when people laughed behind my back, I worked because I knew that success wasn't about getting it right the first time. It was about never giving up, no matter how many times you were knocked down. I wasn't just fighting for my business, I was fighting for myself. I wanted to be seen, not as the girl with too many dreams, but as a woman who could make them come true. As time passed, things didn't get easier. They got harder. Every day felt like I was running against a wall, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to get ahead. There were days when I would sit in front of my computer, staring at the screen, feeling completely defeated. The bills piled up, and every order that didn't come through made me question everything I had worked for. Am I just chasing a dream that will never come true? I would ask myself. The doubt was unbearable. There were moments when I felt like I had nothing left to give. My savings were running low, and the constant pressure of keeping my business afloat was starting to wear me down. It felt like the world was closing in, and no matter how many hours I worked, I was stuck in the same place. My father's words echoed in my mind, getting louder with each failure. He was right, wasn't he? Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe he had been right all along. "You're wasting your time, Sophia," my father would say whenever we talked about my business. "This is never going to work. You're just going to end up disappointed." He didn't say it in a way that was meant to help. It was more like a confirmation of everything I already feared. The person who I looked up to, who I thought would believe in me no matter what, had completely given up on my dreams. Every time he said those words, I felt a little more crushed. I tried to keep it together when he would say things like that, but inside, I was breaking. I wondered if I had made a mistake. I started questioning myself, asking, what if he's right? What if I really am just wasting my time? There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to stop the thoughts running through my head. What if I just quit? What if I walked away from it all and accepted that this was never going to happen? But then, something inside me refused to give up. Even when everything felt like it was falling apart, there was this small voice inside of me that wouldn't let me quit. I remembered why I started. I remembered that no dream is built without struggle. And I remembered the promise I made to myself, not to let anyone, not even my father, decide what I could or couldn't do. So I pushed through the darkness. Every rejection, every failure, only made me more determined. I couldn't let go of this dream. It wasn't just about proving my father wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was strong enough to make it. I told myself, I'm not giving up. I will keep going, no matter how hard it gets. It wasn't easy, and there were still so many doubts, but I knew I had to try just a little harder to fight just a little longer. The struggle was real, and there were many days when it felt like I was losing. But deep down, I knew that if I stopped now, I would regret it forever. So I kept pushing, because even when I felt like giving up, I knew I couldn't. I had come too far to turn back now. But then, one day, everything changed. Out of nowhere, I got an email that I wasn't expecting, something that would turn everything upside down. At first, I thought it was spam, or maybe just another one of those emails that promised success but never delivered. But something told me to open it, so I did. And there it was. The subject line read, "Sophia, you're featured on Forbes." My heart stopped for a moment. I couldn't believe it. My hands shook as I clicked on the email to read more. It was real. The email explained that my business was being featured in Forbes, one of the most respected names in business and finance. I stared at the screen in disbelief, not quite able to process what I was seeing. This was it. This was the moment I had worked for, the moment when all my pain, all my sacrifices, had finally paid off. After everything I had been through, after all the doubts, the failures, the endless nights of worrying if I would make it, I had made it. Forbes? I had done something that most people only dream of. I had succeeded. I wanted to shout, to tell everyone, to show the world that my hard work had finally been recognized. But instead, I sat there quietly, staring at the article, feeling a rush of emotions. The validation, the pride, it was overwhelming. I had proven to myself that I was capable of making this happen, no matter how hard the journey was. I knew I had to call my father. Even though he had been skeptical all along, this moment felt important. I picked up the phone, my hands still trembling from the shock. When he answered, I didn't waste any time. I told him about the feature, trying to keep my voice calm, but it was hard. "Dad, I just got featured on Forbes. My business is on their website right now." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear the skepticism in his voice. "Are you sure? Maybe it's some mistake." But I was too excited to care. I told him to check it for himself, and within seconds, I could hear the sound of him clicking away on his computer. Then the silence came again. I waited, holding my breath, not knowing what to expect. And then I heard it. "Oh my God. Sophia, it's real. Your name is really there. I didn't think this was possible." His voice was different now. It wasn't full of doubt anymore. It was full of disbelief, mixed with something else, maybe even a bit of regret. The man who had told me that I would never make it was now realizing that I had proven him wrong in the most incredible way possible. I could hear him taking a deep breath as he processed what he was seeing. This was the moment when everything shifted. My father's realization that he had underestimated me, that he had doubted my dreams for so long, was finally here. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger or frustration. I just felt a quiet sense of peace. I had made it. I had succeeded. I didn't need anyone's approval to chase my dreams anymore. But it was nice to know that even my father, who had once doubted me, was now seeing me in a whole new light. The next time I saw my father, I knew I had to show him the Forbes article. It wasn't about gloating or rubbing my success in his face. It was about showing him that, despite all the doubts and mockery, I had made it. I remember sitting across from him at the kitchen table, holding my phone in my hand. I could feel my heart racing, but I stayed calm. I didn't need to shout or prove anything. The article spoke for itself. I handed him my phone, and I said, "Dad, I want you to see something." He took the phone without saying much, but I could tell he was still skeptical. As he scrolled through the article, I watched his face carefully. At first, there was confusion, like he didn't quite believe what he was seeing. Then, his eyes widened as he saw my name, my business, in bold letters on the Forbes website. His mouth went a little dry and he stopped scrolling. I could see the disbelief in his eyes, the surprise, and maybe even a little regret. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence. My father didn't know how to react. He looked at the screen, then back at me, unsure of what to say. I could see the realization hitting him slowly. He had spent so many years telling me that I would never make it, that I would fail. But now, here it was, proof that I had succeeded, proof that I had done something he thought was impossible. The silence between us grew heavy. He didn't say a word for a long time. I could see the weight of his thoughts. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice softer than usual. I never thought you could do it, Sophia. I didn't believe in you. But you did it. You proved me wrong. I could hear the regret in his voice, and for a moment I felt a mix of emotions, but I didn't let myself get caught up in anger or resentment. I had spent so much time trying to get his approval, but I had come to understand that I didn't need it. I never needed his approval to succeed. I had learned that the hard way. I looked at him calmly and I said, I never needed your approval, Dad. I just needed to believe in myself. The words were simple, but they carried everything I had been holding inside for all those years. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't looking for validation. What mattered was that I had found the strength to keep going, even when no one else believed in me. And now, in this quiet moment, my father could see that. His face softened, and I could tell he was starting to understand that it wasn't about him or his doubts. It was about me finding my own path and proving to myself that I was capable of more than anyone ever thought possible. And in that moment, I realized that maybe that was all the revenge I needed. As I look back on everything that happened, I realized something important. It wasn't about proving my father wrong. Yes, I had spent years trying to show him that I could succeed. But in the end, the real victory wasn't in his approval or in proving him wrong. It was in proving to myself that I could make it, no matter what anyone said. I had spent so much time trying to live up to his expectations, trying to get him to believe in me, but the truth is, I needed to believe in myself first. For so long, I had been searching for validation from outside sources: my father, my friends, society. But when I finally stopped looking for approval from others and focused on my own belief in myself, that's when everything started to change. My business grew, I grew, and I became someone who didn't need to rely on anyone else's doubts or expectations. I learned that success wasn't about waiting for others to say, you did it. It was about waking up every day, no matter how hard it got, and continuing to push forward. It was about not giving up, even when it felt like the world was telling me to quit. As time passed, I saw my father change, too. At first, he was quiet, unsure of how to deal with the success I had achieved. But as he saw me growing stronger and more confident, something in him began to shift. He stopped making the same harsh comments. Instead, he started offering encouragement, even if it was just a small, quiet remark. I'm proud of you, Sophia, he would say every once in a while. And though it was simple, those words meant the world to me. It wasn't about him saying he was sorry or admitting he had been wrong. It was about him seeing me for who I truly was, a woman who had fought for her dreams and made them a reality. But through all of this, I realized that it was my growth, my strength, that mattered most. My father came around, yes, and that felt good. But what really mattered was how much I had changed. I had learned to trust myself, to keep going even when no one else believed I could. I wasn't the same person I was when I started. I had become someone who believed in her own potential, no matter the obstacles. In the end, I came to understand that the real victory wasn't in the recognition, the Forbes feature, or in proving my father wrong. The real victory was in refusing to give up when everything seemed impossible. It was about finding strength in my own belief and knowing that no matter how many people doubted me, I was capable of achieving anything I set my mind to. That was the true reward, the quiet peace that comes from knowing you didn't quit, no matter how tough things got. I didn't need anyone's approval, not even my father's. The only approval I needed was my own, and I had given that to myself every single day. Have you ever faced doubt from the people you love? Have you ever been told that your dreams were too big? Share your revenge story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you prove the doubters wrong. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content like this. Your support means the world to me. Remember, the best revenge is always success. Believe in your dreams no matter who doubts them. Keep going, keep fighting, and one day you'll see how strong you really are.